AIAS. So if you didn't know, Designers Without Boundaries is a student organization that helps students through scholarship and community service. So we actually provide yearly scholarships to our scholars throughout the year, and we also provide a set amount of events that our scholars have to actually attend and become a part of this rich and vibrant community. And AIS is a nonprofit, a student organization that is for that's nationally recognized and is for architecture students. But we're also open to all design fields. So if architecture is not really in your landscape architecture, urban design and planning, we still have membership for you and always willing to admit more into our chapter. So now I will go ahead and pass it on to Susannah and just introduce herself, and then we'll introduce our other two student moderators.
So hi, I'm Susannah Drake. I'm a professor in the Envd program, sort of a switch hitter between architecture and landscape architecture, and the advisor to AIAS. And I'm really thrilled that this group has put together such an incredible panel. You've done such a good job putting together you've done it in such a great professional way, and I'm just really impressed with everything that you've done. And so, but you're not here to listen to me, you're here to listen to the panelists. So I will pass the baton back over to the leaders.
Okay, so if you could go ahead and introduce yourself, Julia.
Yeah, hi there. My name is Julia Rodriguez. I am a second year in environmental design, emphasizing in architecture, and I am one of your moderators for tonight.
Hi everyone. Hi everyone. My name is Itai Bugarin. I'm going to be your second moderator for the night. I'm a second year here at environmental design, emphasizing in architecture. Again, thank you everyone for coming today, especially our panelists. For tonight, I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves, starting off with Flory.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me okay? All right, awesome. So thank you so much for having me. I've been very excited about this panel with you guys ever since Victor explained it to me and invited me. So yeah, my name is Flory. My parents are Dominican and Puerto Rican. I've been in Colorado since I was 12 years old. I've been in architecture for about 15 years. And I, along with Patricia, I am one of the co-founders for NOMA Colorado. And we're very excited, we're very proud, and we hope that all of you guys are gonna be joining us. So yeah, I'm just very happy to be here, very passionate about our industry and about advancing ourselves as professionals and about sustainability, diversity, and really finding some justice and equity in our field. Thank you for having me.
Okay, now on to Patricia.
Hi, can you all hear me? Hi, thank you so much for inviting me to your Coffee with an Architect. As Flory said, I'm also a co-founder of NOMA Colorado, and I also agree we would love to have all of you join us very soon. I am originally from Massachusetts, and I was born and raised by Haitian immigrants, so I'm very much so a Haitian. And I found myself in Denver about 5 years ago, and I've been working in the area and throughout Colorado. Currently, I'm working on education buildings with Cunningham Group Architecture. And I'm also teaching a studio with CU Denver. So thank you for having me.
Okay, Ivan.
Hello, I'm Ivan Patino. I'm originally from Bogota, Colombia. I graduated from Envd in 2015, and thanks to Designers Without Boundaries, I was able to land my job at Workshop 8. So Workshop 8 is a boutique architecture firm that specializes in senior and affordable housing projects for the housing authorities. But we do a little bit of everything too, and we dabble in some commercial stuff, and we also love painting murals. So we've done a lot of community murals throughout Boulder. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, last but not least, Gregory.
Good evening, my name is Gregory Chrislow. I am an assistant professor here at the University of Kansas in their School of Architecture and Design. I actually am a graduate of the environmental design program in Boulder. I grew up in Denver area, and actually I'm a registered architect in Denver as well still. Recently, before I started teaching here, I also was an adjunct in Denver and in Boulder, but before a lot of you were there currently. And then I had a bike shop in the Five Points neighborhood of Denver. After practicing architecture for about 17 years, I decided to do some more direct engagement with our Northeast community and invest in my own neighborhood. So I opened a bike shop. I did something I was passionate about. And I feel that when I teach students, it's a great example about how the education of design and architecture is just almost like a quasi-entrepreneurial opportunity to really represent yourself and really do what you have a passion for. But it's good to be here and it's nice to meet all of you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here tonight to answer our questions. And I think without further ado, Itai and I are going to start asking. Any one of our four panelists can unmute themselves and answer whenever they'd like. So starting off, was there ever an interview question that surprised you in your job search, or was there an inappropriate question directed to you, and how did you refute that?
I can give you an example.
Yeah, please.
So my first interview, my father reached out to a friend and said that there was a firm that was hiring for summer internships. And this was my first year at environmental design. And this is before all the digital stuff. I graduated in the early 90s. So we were still drawing by hand. And my portfolio was probably almost as big as I was. I didn't have the aptitude to understand how to reduce those things at that point. But anyway, so I dragged it to this interview. And the conversation started with, so are you just applying this so you don't have to flip burgers this summer? And so I was so young, I didn't really know how to handle that question. You know, of course, I was just saying, no, I just would like to get the experience. But, you know, after you leave, there are things that, you know, it's a good question. How do you handle it? And in Colorado, the design community is pretty small. So you really have to be, unfortunately, you have to be somewhat diplomatic and political about it because you don't know if you run into that person again. But I did run into that person again. When I was able to, after I graduated, I worked in it was a small firm at the time, but it was an interior design firm. And the firm that I was interviewing before was an advertising firm, and they were downsizing. And so when I ran into him again, I was eliminating his office. So again, you don't know who you're gonna run into next. So you really have to be political about it, but don't let it stop you from getting to where you want to go.
So I guess I will go next. Gregory, thank you for sharing. That is mind-blowing, but it is sadly all too common, so thank you. But before I answer that question, I actually wanted to ask you guys something. So the title of this meeting is Coffee with an Architect. I wanted to know how many of you guys have this exact same mug? Because I know you all have this mug, because this is the one gift that every family member will gift you in Christmas. So I know all of you have an architecture mug, so I brought mine with some tea in honor of this, just letting you all know. So anyway, next I want to, oh, I see some mugs. Okay, I see you. I see you. Okay. That's awesome. Cheers, guys. Cheers. It's good to be here. And then second of all, I just wanted to commend you guys. This is such a beautiful group of people. You guys are so diverse. And I love that I'm seeing like every color here, you know what I mean? And that's beautiful. That's what we need to do, you guys. So good job. I guess I'm gonna answer that question with saying, it wasn't at a job interview, but I will say one time, one of my jurors at studio in grad school, he said to me, I did have a project that was about a tree nursery, and I had a lot of data about it. I had done a lot of research. I was very proud of myself. And he says to me, I am so sorry, but I'm not buying the integrity of your project because you just don't look like someone that would know anything about a nursery. So that happened in real life. And I stopped, and my teacher was like, and I was like, may I ask, what do you think a person that knows how a tree looks like? And bless his heart, he went on to describe, something very opposite of me. So I was like, okay, I appreciate your opinion, but I do know my stuff because I researched it and I learned it with my brain. So I know it. So there you go. That's my experience.
So wow, you guys have some pretty intense stories. I guess I've been lucky that I have not experienced something that direct, but I will say that often when I interview, one of the first questions that always comes up, and I already have I know it's going to come up every single time, is my name, and then there is often so you're Ivan or Ivan? Which one is it? Which is fine, but it right away puts me on a since I already know it's going to come, and when it comes, it's kind of like, oh, it's so predictable, right? And I'm just thinking, and it's always in the back of my head, like that I'm playing that minority card, and sometimes it could be for a benefit, or it could be unfair, Sometimes it's like, how do you play the card right? And it's sad that we have to think about those things, but it's kind of a reality.
I know I'm not a panelist, but I got to just say one comment, because at one point I had a very famous architect who I was working for, and we had a client that kind of liked me, and he said, come on, Susannah, take one for the team. That was bad.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, yeah. Yes,
like,
you would know this person, very, very famous architect. Take one for the team, yeah.
Are you gonna give us a hint on who it was?
No way. Not on a Zoom call that's being recorded. Because the larger architectural community is also very small.
Yeah, but I think it's good that we're talking about these things, because if you don't talk about it, it becomes kind of like no one knows, right? So
right.
I think this I like that we're doing this, that we're putting out there, even if we're not knowing exactly who it is or what it is, just the fact that people are aware that it's out there.
I would say I don't recall anything during an interview, mostly because I was probably too naive to catch it. I've always been very young, so there's a lot to say to that. But what I did realize and notice, as you can see, my name is Patricia Joseph. That's you can't tell. You cannot tell. And it's something it's really funny. And also on the phone, because of how I grew up, learning French, Creole, and English all at the same time, I have no accent in a way. It's really hard to place me. So I think I saw a lot of surprise reactions when I would show up to interviews of, oh, she's here for the interview. And kind of I think it took, people some time to kind of, oh, okay, she's here for this interview that we totally, signed her up for and looked at her resume and all that stuff. And then I would like to say that there are a lot of things, though, that I do remember about the first weeks of starting anywhere. And it's a lot of questions similar to what the other panelists have shared, a lot of, do you know Revit? When it's clear that this role involves a lot of Revit and we're not hiring people who don't know Revit, right? So it's always kind of, there's a couple of things and sometimes you don't notice it. Sometimes you think it's personal and then you realize, no, it's on a different level, but those are kind of the experiences I've had.
Well, thank you guys for answering. I mean, it's kind of sad to think about that this goes on. Well, still thank you guys and for bringing awareness to this. So our next question is, how diverse is the firm that you work or worked for? And how do they define diversity and inclusion? And how do they uphold it?
I can continue. So my firm is about 270 people, and we are in a couple of cities throughout the US. Minneapolis is our headquarters. We have an office here in Denver. We used to have an office in Mississippi, 2 offices in California. And so out of 270 people, I am one of another Black female who are in architecture. And we have 2 Black males in architecture. And then we have a handful of other people of color. So for perspective. So what we've done actually, because we are aware of this and we don't, what my company does, we don't really like hide the numbers. We openly share that information. And within the last year, we've created something that's called NOMA at CGA. And we've utilized the people who are connected to NOMA chapters in their local offices to come together monthly to talk about ways we can bring the mission and goals of NOMA, which is the National Organization of Minority Architects. So we've come together to talk about ways we can implement those goals and mission into our company. And so it's a great meeting because it's not, we talk about a lot of things and we've created a safe space to do that in. And we also are talking with stakeholders such as the CEO, the CFO, and the other various principals of color as well. So it's a really great space we've created, and now we're starting to put initiatives in place. One initiative I'm working on specifically is this mentorship connection program where we would offer a mentorship program to a minority within our local offices. And so we would offer that connection, and people within our firm could mentor or do specific things, basically providing a link to minorities who are coming out of school to the office. So we're doing a lot of things like that. We are going to conferences, or we're having talks. We held a talk, and we just kind of, like this panel, we shared our voices throughout the company. So Cunningham Group is taking an active role in the issues regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we even have other task forces like gender equity as well within our company.
Thank you guys. Thank you both for answering that. I think going forward, would you say it has been a different path for you in comparison to your cohorts for your license hours or path so far? And going off of that, have you been given projects or initiatives based solely on your racial identity, and was this appreciated?
I can go, well, go ahead.
You go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, in Workshop I've been fortunate that we're pretty diverse, and they appreciate my diversity. So that's definitely a plus. I can think of a couple times where we were designing in Latino neighborhoods, and we had to do community outreach. And my boss thought it would be a good idea for me to go because it'd be easier for that residents to approach me and relate to me, and for me to understand them and talk to them. So I appreciate that. Also, I'm a veteran, and Workshop A had assigned me and another veteran, a coworker, into an army renovation project. And so I think that they think about our strengths and when placing us in projects, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, so I was gonna say that that's a card that you can play both ways, right? So sometimes they need, they need that diversity check mark to win the project. And unfortunately, or fortunately, hey, that's a game that we play, right? So sometimes it can definitely benefit you. But something that I would advise everyone is Don't let yourself fall into tokenism. You are more than that. So if they're gonna put your face on a project because it's gonna make them look good, make sure that you're on the project and that they're not just using your name to land the project, and then you're just assigned to do bathrooms in something completely different.
You know, my experience with that particular, I was fortunate. My first firm I worked with was a woman-owned firm, and she was very open about roles in the firm. It was an interiors firm, so we took on a lot quite early. But one of our first architecture projects was the Gathering Place. And I came back to that same firm after graduate school. I did graduate school in Chicago. So I came back to Denver and worked for that same firm. But she put together this team and actually approached me about being the design architect for it. Just to, again, create a diverse team, but go in there with something that we would be different from the other firms proposing their design teams to this particular entity. And it helped get the project. But as you said, it wasn't just because I was meeting a check mark. I was actually the design architect and was able to meet with the client. And it was probably the most rewarding project I've ever done, because it was something that the client actually appreciated what we were doing. So yes, it could work in your favor, but you have to be able to understand how that does work in your favor. So.
Okay, so adding to the previous question, have these tasks derailed you from your overall professional development, or have they propelled you forward?
I could talk about that. Also, I wanted to add before that some advice I got from someone who's doing really well in their architecture career, of navigating being kind of used as like getting projects, right? Having your face put on a proposal, and navigating that, and having your company acknowledge that and actually ask for that pay, right? So if I'm on the project and we land it, I need to, compensate me for that effort too. So there's this idea of holding people accountable, and also making sure everyone, you know your worth, and now it's up to you to make sure other people are recognizing that worth. And so I think what you will find as minority, hopefully this changes, that's part of the reason why we do these things, is that advancing in your career is really hard to navigate. And that's something you're going to have to work really hard to do. And you're gonna have to work really hard for yourself to do it. I think there's a lot of complacency with, the minority in this spot who does well. And they're like, usually we're okay with that. That's fine, that's great. But my advice to all of you, or to anyone, would be to push those boundaries of when can I do this, or what do I need to do this, and be persistent about that. Because as much as, like school, you get moved up, right? You graduate, you go through this class, and this class is kind of like automatic. And we think that about architecture, that in a couple of years, I'll have this much experience, and then I'll be able to be the PA, or I'll get my license, I'll be the PA, and then soon I'll be the PM, and then, or if I wanted to be the PD, or project manager, or the project designer, I could, in a couple of years, I'll be able to do those things. But what we've seen in the industry is that people of color they're not really represented in leadership. So that is something you have to navigate, and navigate on your own, because you just have to, this is something you look out for. No one else is going to look out for you for that.
I think in regards to whether this will propel you or hold you back, it just really depends on how you react and how you play the game, like I was saying earlier. One thing that I think about is in this industry, which obviously has a diversity issue, a lot of times the way that you succeed in this industry is the people the relationships that you make. And I think sometimes, I think back of when, especially first arriving to this country, not knowing English very well, still not knowing it too well, is that sometimes we tend to, I used to be very shy about it, and I don't want to talk because I don't want people hear my accent, because they make fun when I say something and it sounds funny. And you have to kind of like put yourself out there if you want to make these relationships, and just open up yourself and be open to talking to people and sharing your experiences, because that's how you make those connections. And I think those connections help you in the long term.
Thank you both for sharing. Those are great points. Going forward, do diverse terms ever make you feel like you're in a spotlight, or to a certain extent make you feel tokenized in your workplace?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. I think that's a great question, Julia. So you guys, unfortunately, I would say that in our industry, diverse terms and vocabulary is not as common as you guys would think. And we need more education on that. In the past, when we've spoken with groups that are largely of the majority of the American culture, when we use words like hypervisibility and tokenism, intersectional, intersectional like racism, and when we say things like unbiased, like conscious bias, unconscious bias, people don't know what we're talking about. And so I think, yeah, that's a great question. One of the things we're pushing for in NOMA is to educate our colleagues in what these words mean, because you can definitely put the person of color in the spot, and like, you feel like, a little bit intimidated. And it also, with our colleagues who are white, it makes them feel a little bit uncomfortable, because nobody wants to feel like they're a bad person, or they're being inconsiderate, or they're being, they're putting others down. So I think a lot of times, not having that education, when we talk about these topics, sometimes our white colleagues can feel like attacked, you know what I mean? Like, I swear I didn't do anything wrong. It's not my fault. It was my grandpa, and so we need to know these words and find a common language. But unfortunately, we don't have that common language yet.
Well,
Yeah, I would, go ahead.
Oh, please, go ahead.
Thank you. I was just going to echo what Flori was saying, and that when I call them the buzzwords, or like the hot topic words, come up, and I actually had this conversation with a colleague of mine. We used political, that word was used, and Flori knows what I'm talking about too, because we talked about it. But understanding too that you're going to hear words, you're going to feel it, your face is probably going to try to resist, but there's what I've learned is that the moments of just continuing to listen to also understand the situation, even pausing to let that word echo, so that everyone kind of hears the echo of that word and kind of feels the weight of the word that is kind of triggering this uncomfortable space, is effective. And to use that word again, if it's really like a strong word for you, use it again, and ask them back. Like Flori had an example earlier, ask that question back, or ask that word back, like, what do you mean? Or are you sure you mean this? And I think it's what we've been trying to do at Cunningham a lot of the times, is to encourage that the stop and say something attitude, right? Like, if you hear it, like, stop it there. We're gonna like address it when it happens. So that's that's what I would talk about as far as diverse terms.
Well, the experience that I have now, I'm at the university level. So I'm on the other side of the equation as most of you on the call. So you're students. And at the university, we always associate these campuses with a very diverse population coming internationally, what have you. But if you look around to the departments of architecture, they don't really represent the rest of the university. And so what's been interesting, especially what's been happening in the current events and things of that nature, they're really having to reevaluate especially their faculty and their student bodies. But what's interesting enough, I am the only Black faculty at the University of Kansas. And the school's been, it's been around since 108 years now. It's ridiculous how long it's been here. And so we've never really had a diversity committee until this year. And so I'm on the diversity committee. So it really kind of makes it frustrating about these terms and things of that nature when they're asking you to make these terms and make them visible. And so I'm of the age now that I can kind of just sit back and say, okay, thanks for the appointment, but I'm really not going to do anything. Because it's really, as you go into this, you can't really create terms for other people to come to terms with how they're feeling about that diversity issue at that point too. And so it's not, I think when you're more on the professional side of things outside the university, it tends to be more proactive, because at some point we're talking about bottom line and money, right? As your client base becomes more diverse and there's more projects to go out after, then you have to change, right? Yeah. The economics always talk. But when you get to this point at the university, it's a big wheel that is slow to turn. And I say this is because we want to see more diversity, not only in our student bodies, but in our faculties as well. But you have to understand what you're getting into when you pursue something like that. Because a lot of us, especially a lot of people in architecture in general, just don't see the path into the university level, because everybody wants to be that design architect. But somebody has to teach those people. So it's in all kind of facets of the design world, whether it be on the professional side or on the side of education.
Gregory, did you say that you are at KU?
I am at KU.
With a Jayhawk?
with a Jayhawk, which ironically enough, does anybody know what the Jayhawk is?
No.
So the Jayhawk is actually not a bird. Let's put that out there. The Jayhawk is the nickname that the freedom fighters nicknamed themselves during the time of slavery. And so Missouri was a slave state and Kansas was the freedom state. And so the abolitionists named themselves the Jayhawks. And so the Jayhawks actually, there's a lot of history within the Lawrence area. It was one of the areas of the Underground Railroad and all these kind of histories you just don't know about. But we just associate it with the mascot that's on our basketball jerseys. But it has a lot of meaning to it, so. Yeah. So
Gregory, after this, I'm gonna actually touch base with you because my sister is at KU. She's actually a teacher and she's actually in the PhD program there. And she's in the literature, she's studying literature, but she is focused on the Afro-Latino, Afro-Latinx studies. So she, and she's part of CLACS and a variety of other like diversity groups there. So it's so crazy. You guys are probably like the two Black people in the entire university. So well, I would love to connect you guys.
Yes. Yeah, that'd be great.
You know, but back to what Floyd was talking about a second ago, especially coming from outside of America. I remember thinking when I've heard of America and of the United States and what it was like, that it was this great melting pot of people, and I thought, well, that sounds great. So I come over to the United States, and the first thing I see is like, well, I'm in school and I'm seeing the Latino guys hanging out and the white people hanging out and the Black people hanging out, and I'm like, where is this great melting pot? It's like everyone's separated anyway, and it happens even after you graduate from high school. It still happens. It feels like, well, now you look at architecture, and even told me there's some diversity, is the numbers are not there, right? Like the percentages are just not there. So yeah, it's a great melting pot that is separated. So how's that work?
Well, thank you guys for answering that question. So we're going to move on to the next one. So it is there an experience that tested your commitment to the design field or made you critical of where the design field is currently at?
Can you clarify what you mean?
Okay, here, give me a second. Was there ever a moment where you kind of doubted yourself and doubted the design field itself? Like I can give you an example, like personally, there's like moments when I'm like going to school where I kind of feel like alone and like, you know, they like gives you moments of like, ooh, should I or should I not?
Right.
I would say that one thing that has been interesting for me as an experience in the design field is that it's like such a roller coaster. One week, my mother can call me and she's like, "How are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm stressed. What was going on?" A couple jobs went on hold, and we need work. There's a recession happening, and we may have to furlough some people. I'm scared. And then maybe she calls me a month later, and she's like, "How are you doing now?" "I'm stressed." What's wrong? "We have too much work. All the jobs got reinstated. We don't have enough people. I'm working extra hours." I mean, this is a roller coaster. It goes ups and downs and ups and downs. And sometimes that's stressful, but now I'm kind of like learn how to cope with them. But that's my input with that.
So are you saying, Yvonne, that makes you sometimes feel a little insecure in your job security?
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like, is this really what I want? These levels of stress of like not enough work, too much work, and it's just never like just right, the Goldilocks. And sometimes when I think of that, those extremes is when I think, is this really what I want to keep doing? But then I've learned that it's gonna bounce back or it's gonna bounce down. So just
I would say to Yvonne's point, that he was saying like job security, and also it's who you know in this industry. You guys know that we're in a recession. You guys know that things are low right now. And it's just not a secret that the people that have the strongest connections and are buddies with the people making decisions, they're gonna keep their job, you know? And so I think sometimes as a person of color, we do have a little bit of an extra challenge in being able to connect and bond with the people in our leadership, because everybody in our leadership, and I think your generation is going to change this, and I know it. But right now, what's happening is that people in the leadership are old white guys, okay? They're old white guys. And they are not going to be able to connect to people of a variety of cultures, or to women for that matter. You know, I see a lot of girls here who are American girls, and I think you guys have a similar challenge, you know. I'm not saying that the white guys on this group have it super easy, but there is an unwritten rule that people gravitate towards those like them, okay? So I do believe there is times, like in times that you feel uneasy, like, am I going to be able to keep my job? Unconsciously, if your boss is like you have a better chance of keeping that job. And it's not something that they're doing because they're a bad person. It's just human nature. So I think until we get more people of color in diversity, more women, more people of color in leadership, more women in leadership, you're gonna see that a lot of times the first people to go when we're at a low is those outliers.
And that's really well said. Like, wow. Yeah, you nailed the head.
I think that's what Ivan also was hinting at too.
That's what I meant to say, but I couldn't say it. But you said it well.
De nada, de nada.
Gracias.
You know, to that point though, at least when I was going through and coming out of school and going into firms, there's a complacency in general about getting licensed. It didn't matter who you were, it was just complacency, because you see when you get out there, you're not the one signing the drawings, you're just working in the firm. And so you're like, well, what's the point? But I would encourage everybody on this call that if you really want to follow through, it's getting licensed. Because when this happens, you know, these are the times when those small design firms really thrive, because you know, when you have clients that can't afford the larger firms during recession, they'll have to go to a smaller firm. And that's when you're hungry and you're wanting to do something so that you can make that transition. For instance, I started my bike shop right after or I shouldn't say right after, but maybe a year after I got laid off into architecture. And, you know, I had my license, so I had the ability to either start another firm or do something different, but it just gave me the confidence to be like, look, you know, I have everything I needed to do there. Let's pivot, let's reinvent, let's do something else. But if I hadn't become licensed, I'd always have this hanging over my head. I put all this time into architecture, and I just felt I hadn't completed it. So, so I would really encourage everybody to, even though it's easy in a firm when you get out there, that, you know, what's the point of getting licensed, because you're never the one signing those drawings. But when times like recession happen, those small firms are the ones that thrive. And to order to start your small firm, you need that license.
Yeah, thank you guys all. You make great points. I think as we are coming to a close, we do have some diversity committee members present. So something I think we are all very curious about is, what advice would you give us students to help work at our long-term goals regarding diversity in curriculum, as well as in environmental design as a whole?
I would recommend one thing that's helped me a lot. Workshop 8, they're all big cyclists, and when I came in, I just discovered mountain biking, and I was like, had that mountain biking bug in me, so like I wanted to talk about these mountain bikes, and that really helped me connect with them. So I think it's very important to not overlook your hobbies. Sometimes like finding those cool activities that you combine with people. And they don't have to be architectural related at all. It's just have a lot of experiences that you can talk, so you have things to talk about, so you can have input and perspective. That will help you a lot.
As far as curriculum, the thing that I would challenge, you know, the argument here right now is if Western Civ, you know, how much Western Civ you should be taking as a student to complete your coursework at the university, especially in the School of Architecture. And one of our students questioned, well, why do I have to take Western Civ? Why can't I take civilization in general, whether it be Pacific Rim, you know, Latin civilization, what have you, as long as it's civilization. So questions like that, you know, they're oftentimes are so focused on kind of the historic model of architecture, when that model is really evolving because our clients are evolving. And so as students, unfortunately, you're going to ask those questions. You might not have that professor or educator to be able to answer that question for you. But at least if you start putting it into that mindset, they're going to have to look at that next, you know, tenure track. How do we diversify the curriculum? How do we bring in somebody that is going to have that knowledge, as opposed to bringing in the Western civilization history professor that will just keep history not changing. So as students, you know, look at the curriculum. A lot of times we lose students because they don't have any association with it. And so there's relevancy in all histories or all types of design, and you have to be able to voice that to your faculty.
Amazing, thank you. I did receive one question in my chat box, so I'm going to ask this for the student. What is one piece of advice you would give to an aspiring designer seeking their first internship?
I can speak to this one. So I would say that when you're young and you feel like you don't have a lot of experience, there is like a tendency to double guess yourself, second guess yourself. And so I would say something that was said to me when I was younger, and it's that your own lived experiences and your own perspective is so valuable. There's not another person that's going to bring that to the table. So just take pride in that, and just always make your voice heard, because there might be somebody in the room that is thinking the exact same thing.
My advice would be, and this is something I did by accident, and it's to intern everywhere. You know, every experience that is even linked, and sometimes even remotely linked to architecture, is going to be valuable. And you're going to find out that it comes up. It's going to give you a different perspective of architecture. I did interior staging I worked for Habitat for Humanity, did a lot of odd things that come up, and I understand that I have just a different angle on something now, and I can wrap my head around those things. And very rarely it also gives me, you know, an ability to bring something else to the table, to the project team. And also it's given me versatility. You want to be agile, you want to be flexible. That is something that my company stressed during this time with the pandemic and transitioning, projects going on hold, is that, you know, we stressed we want flexible, agile people. So being able to jump around into, you know, other positions that relate to architecture and being flexible in that is really great. And also when you get into a firm, try everything. And by try everything, I mean, get into all the phases of a project. Get into all work with different consultants as much as you can. Because you're not gonna know, and you're gonna do this for a really long time, and a lot of the projects start to get a little similar. So this is kind of like a love-hate thing about architecture, and if you don't love or hate it, it's not gonna last, right? So get familiar and be exposed to all those things, especially as you're interning and you have the time, and you know, you haven't really set your foot in too deep in anywhere.
I was another tip too that would be worth looking into. I mean, right now, of course, everything's different because of COVID. But I remember talking to somebody who was an Envd student, and he was looking for internship, and I met him in an event. He was asking me what tips I have, and I told him that he was doing great already because he met me at an event that wasn't school related. So look for those opportunities. If there's Boulder Design Week, for the design district, there's a lot of architecture firms in there, so that you know that if you go to that party, that there's going to be architects that are going to be attending that you can talk to. If you go to the AIA Colorado or Housing Colorado, all those events that architects tend to go to, because this is part of that of the industry, that you have to attend these things. It's a great opportunities to meet people, and sometimes you do have to pay for these events, but you don't always necessarily have to pay to go. You can sometimes volunteer, and when you do volunteering, sometimes you have to check registration or check tickets. But then after you've done that, you can join the party and meet people. And again, it's those relationships and those connections that you make that can help you.
Yeah, thank you guys for making those points. And lastly, what recommendations would you give to Envd or other design programs to improve the success and experience of underrepresented students?
Okay, I actually have something I want to share with you guys. So I think the way that we improve our experience and our journey is by staying positive, okay? So whenever these things happen to you or you see them happening, I think that for people of all races, the important thing is to take a moment to absorb and acknowledge and process it, and acknowledge like, hey, I see what happened, this happened, mental note, right? And then if you feel like it needs to be addressed, then address it, right? But after that, you guys move on. You know what I mean? Don't let it hold you down. Don't let it like take up too much of your mental space, you know, use your brain like to, you know, remain positive, remain creative, remain hungry and pumped, you know? And I know that's hard, and it's harder for people that, it's harder for women, and it's harder for everyone who's like a minority, because you do have to kind of put in that little bit extra energy to still have the same success, because you do have to carry different challenges. But I say the way that we all keep the experience going and that we make it better for everyone is don't let any of that hold you back. You know, don't leave the profession, don't get discouraged. Yeah, some people are going to still be a little bit ignorant and uneducated, but good news is everybody from this generation of you young people, I see a lot of beautiful community happening. I see all of you guys being so much more united and open-minded than even my generation. So there's a lot of hope out there. And so just, you know, acknowledging is very important, because we're not going to hide that this shit happens, you know, But also once that happens, you have to like, don't let it hold you back.
I think if I can add after Flori just summed it up so well. I was so empowered just then, Flori. I was like, I'm not gonna let anything happen. So something I've seen and has been so impactful for us is sharing, right? And this idea of invitation. So, because I think I heard too in the question is that what can you do to just make it a better space for people of color? And so there's this idea that, you know, there's this table, right? And we are come to this point where we've all been invited to the table, but we haven't all been invited to speak, right? We haven't all been invited to do certain things. And so if you are, you know, organizing these spaces, if you are trying to push forward in this way, there's moments where you're going to need to invite people and you're going to need to create space for sharing. And sharing is huge, right? Sharing helps us connect. I think if I told a story, I think we would all connect differently at different parts of that story. So providing that safe space as well, right? Providing the ground rules, that's something we do often. We like say that, you know, especially around the time of the death of George Floyd, we held conversations within our company. And before those conversations even began, we had rules, we had ground rules for those conversations. We had words we all agreed we are not going to say. And then we also, you know, talked about the quietness, right? We talked about the need that not every person of color is going to have to speak today. They have an option to be silent. And so that idea of creating the space, inviting people to speak, inviting people to participate, and encouraging sharing is a really great thing that you can do.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think we are hitting our end mark, but I just wanted to say thank you all so much for attending. This was seriously so amazing. Both AIS and DWB are very grateful that we could have such a diverse and talented panel tonight. We appreciate you guys taking time out of your days to come share your experiences with us. And thank you to everyone who showed up tonight too to hear their experiences. It means a lot. And if anyone has any closing statements, please feel free to share.
If I can just say one thing, to that last question, you know, make yourself visible. We often, you know, I've worked with a lot of groups within Northeast Park Hill, and sometimes some of my young constituents have success, but they don't make themselves visible when they come back to their own communities. And if you want to really expand and broaden the equity of everything, you have to make yourself visible to show that you are an example of what can be done. And so, you know, do be willing to go back and make yourself known. And one of the people that I would say that you guys are probably familiar with, but you just didn't understand, but he is a graduate of the Envd program. We graduated together, and we used to have these long conversations late at night in studio, and you know, about what it is. He is Mexican American, but what it is to be in this school. And now he's the chair at University of California, Berkeley's architecture program, Ron Royale. And he's doing some amazing things based on how he grew up in Encinitas, Colorado. And so if you look him up or what have you on Instagram and stuff like that, he's making himself visible and understanding how, what the possibilities are. So.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I think with that, this concludes our Coffee with an Architect. So thank you everyone for coming, and thank you to all of our panelists. This was amazing.
Thank you
guys.
guys.
Thank you.
Good luck,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic event.
Amazing panel. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.